Hello there, Jess here. Welcome to today's Blue Studios lesson. So my friend Jaja invited me over to her house the other day because she was eager for me to meet her new friend. I was pretty excited because she'd been talking about him for weeks. She even mentioned something about a magic trick he could perform, and I couldn't wait to see that too. I absolutely love magic tricks. Turns out I was in for a surprise when I got to her house. She led me right into her backyard and introduced me to her new buddy, Bob the tomato plant. And the magic trick he could perform? It was something called photosynthesis. She told me photosynthesis is the process by which plants produce their own food using sunlight. As I thought about that for a moment, I'll admit that alone was kind of a mind-blowing idea. After all, I knew I couldn't just sit in the sun and make my own food inside my own body. I also knew food was absolutely required for all living organisms. We use food to create energy, and we use energy to breathe, to move, to grow, to heal, to think, to be alive. So how did Bob pull off this trick of making food using sunlight? Well, that turned out to be a pretty fascinating process. Photosynthesis comes from the two Greek words, photo, meaning light, and synthesis, meaning put together. And that is just what Bob does. He puts together light. In other words, he gathers up light energy and changes it into chemical energy. That trick actually deserves a huge round of applause because it's not simple. The most basic explanation is this. Plants use sunlight to transform water and carbon dioxide into special sugars and oxygen. And instead of a magician's hat, they use their leaves or needles to perform the feat. Jaja wanted to make one point about photosynthesis very clear to me, because apparently a lot of people get it confused. Plants don't change sunlight into food. They use the energy from sunlight to make food. Sunlight for a plant is like a barbecue grill to us. It doesn't change into our food. It's the energy we can use to create something delicious. At this point, I took a close look at Bob's leaves. They were a deep, beautiful green. Jaja explained that most plants are green because deep in a plant's cells lives a special substance called chlorophyll. Chlorophyll is a pigment, and it is made up of light-capturing molecules. Chlorophyll happens to capture every wavelength of light but green. Green it reflects. Therefore, plants look green. To picture the chlorophyll more clearly, Jaja asked me to imagine a tiny plant cell in one of Bob's leaves. Inside the cell lives a lot of different parts, but one structure in particular is called a chloroplast. Inside the chloroplast are what look like miniature stacks of green pancakes, called granum. An individual pancake is called a thylakoid, and every thylakoid is green because they're filled with, you guessed it, chlorophyll. Bob waved one of his green leaves in the breeze, and Jaja went on to explain photosynthesis in two stages. The first stage depends on light, and therefore is called the light-dependent stage. Sunlight beams down on Bob's leaves, and deep inside the cells of Bob's leaves, the green chlorophyll gets excited. This energy breaks up water molecules in a chemical process called photolysis. The energy from this reaction is then stored in special molecules with the fancy acronyms of ATP and NADPH. Basically, in the first stage, one of the most magical parts of photosynthesis had occurred, a transformation of light energy to chemical energy. With that, Bob is now ready to perform the second stage of photosynthesis. This stage doesn't require the presence of light, and so naturally is called the light-independent stage. If I placed one of Bob's leaves under a microscope, I would see tiny pores called stoma. These pores breathe in carbon dioxide from the air. Bob uses the carbon dioxide with those special energy molecules mentioned earlier to create two things, glucose and oxygen. Glucose is Bob's food. It's a special sugar that Bob uses, along with other nutrients, for energy. Bob uses the glucose to grow and develop, and he releases, or diffuses, the oxygen into the atmosphere through the stoma on his leaves. If I hadn't realized it already, Jaja pointed out an obvious fact. Bob breathes in carbon dioxide and breathes out oxygen, and she and I breathe in oxygen and breathe out carbon dioxide. That means humans and plants have the perfect friendship. This was a good time to summarize what I knew so far. In photosynthesis, Plants use the inputs of water and carbon dioxide to create the outputs of glucose, sugars, and oxygen. They performed this trick using the energy from sunlight. They transformed light energy into chemical energy. They used glucose as their food and breathed out oxygen. I'm pretty sure one of Bob's tomatoes nodded in approval. Then Jaja let me in on a little-known fact about Bob and all of his plant friends. They also breathe in oxygen and expel carbon dioxide, just like us. The process is called respiration and is happening 24/7 in plants. And here's a surprise. In darkness, plants are actually producing more carbon dioxide than oxygen because photosynthesis has stopped. There's even an old saying, don't sleep under a tree at night because you'll suffocate. This possibility is highly unlikely, but the advice definitely reflects this fun fact about plants. I confess to Jaja, I was now a bit amazed at Bob the tomato plant and all the things he could do. She agreed. She thought it was fantastic how Bob and his many plant friends were designed so perfectly for photosynthesis. Bob happened to have leaves for the magical task, but evergreen trees had needles, and cacti had scales and spines. In addition to his leaves, where most of the magic of photosynthesis was happening, Bob also had stems to help him stand up and hold his leaves out to the sunlight. These stems also transported water and other nutrients throughout his little plant body. Bob's roots also played an important role, since they were what anchored him in place and absorbed water and nutrients from the soil. Jaja pointed to the tomatoes hanging at the end of Bob's many stems. The tomatoes were where Bob stored his excess chemical energy, in the form of sugars and carbohydrates. Plants used fruits and roots and leaves as storage facilities, basically. And lucky for us, we could eat what they stored. Apples off a tree, carrots out of the ground, and leaves from a lettuce plant were all available food for our own energy. And here was perhaps the most incredible fact of all. Photosynthesis was absolutely necessary to life on our planet. Without plants of all kinds, humans and creatures wouldn't be able to breathe. Without plants, humans and creatures wouldn't have food of any kind, plants or animals. For that matter, without plants, there wouldn't be any of the fossil fuels we depend on, because those are all produced from the energy left behind in dead plants. Ready for some more magic? Here are some fun facts about photosynthesis. Plants aren't the only ones who can perform photosynthesis. A particular group of bacteria and single-celled organisms, called protists, can do it as well. Any organism that uses photosynthesis to manufacture their own food is called a photoautotroph. Chlorophyll is only one of the several categories of pigment that may be present in a plant. Others are anthocyanins, carotenoids, and betalains. Together, these pigments cover the wide variety of natural colors possible in plants. The light-independent stage of photosynthesis is also known as the Calvin cycle. It's named for Melvin Calvin, an American biochemist who was the first to discover this unique talent of plants. It's estimated that 30% of the world's oxygen is produced by plants on land. The remaining 70% is provided by the phytoplankton living in our oceans, seas, and lakes. In our planet's many ecosystems, plants are considered producers. They are at the beginning of any food chain, since they are the organism that can produce their own food. Anyone who eats a producer is considered a consumer. So why do leaves change color in the fall? It's the pause that some plants take in food-making production. They stop making chlorophyll, letting it break down and get reabsorbed. Without this green pigment, other pigments present in the plant are now visible. Plant food really isn't food for a plant. Remember, plants make their own food, and what comes in that box or bottle is simply a supply of nutrients to help them in the process. Believe it or not, there are plants who don't rely on photosynthesis. Examples include the phantom orchid, the ghost pipe, and the corpse lily. Bob the tomato plant had some activity suggestions to explore his best talent. Explore the world of protists, who can also perform photosynthesis. Who are they? What are some examples of protists? How is their process of photosynthesis different from plants? Amaze your friends and family with what you know about these teensy-weensy organisms. There's a wide variety of plants that live on our planet, and each one has their own unique design for photosynthesis. Explore some ways in which plants capture sunlight, gather up water, or collect nutrients. Since there are so many plant adaptations, you may want to narrow it down to one category of green thing: plants, trees, or cacti, and then pick 10 examples within that category. Present your findings in a slideshow or on a poster board. Plants can be divided into 2 categories: vascular and non-vascular. Find some examples in both categories and compare and contrast them. What does vascular mean? What's special about vascular plants? What's unique to non-vascular plants? What do they have in common? If you love art, pick a plant that you'd like to draw or paint. Study up on its many parts and create as accurate a picture as you can. Don't forget to include the parts that are under the ground as well. Carnivorous plants rely on photosynthesis to make food, but also gain nutrients from eating insects and bugs. Pick out 5 fascinating carnivorous plants and investigate their methods of trapping and digesting their prey. Create a trivia game with fun facts about these hungry plants to play with friends or family. Plants are survivalists. Aquatic plants like kelp live and breathe underwater. Xerophytes like saguaro cactus can survive in climates with very little water. And epiphytes, such as orchids, live on trees to have access to resources like rainwater or sunlight. Find a few more examples in each of these categories and take a closer look at their adaptations. How do they survive in their particular ecosystem? The shape, number, thickness, size, and arrangement of leaves all play a part in the photosynthesis of a particular plant. Pick 10 plants whose leaves are remarkably different from one another. Create a set of flashcards for these plants with their picture on the front and fun facts about their leaves on the back. There do happen to be a few creatures who use photosynthesis in some way as a secondary energy source. Who are these unusual characters in the animal world? How do they benefit from photosynthesis? What makes them especially talented? Well, that's it for today. Turns out Jaja had been right about Bob the tomato plant. He was smart and perfectly amazing. Thanks for joining me, and see you next time.
We are thrilled that you're watching Blue Studios 24/7. We're so excited to bring round-the-clock entertainment and educational content to your home. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button to stay up to date with our latest videos. At Blue Studios, we aspire to revolutionize the way families spend time together. We empower families by providing them with tools to work together, earn and learn, and achieve new heights of success. Visit www.bluestudios.io to discover more about our mission and how we empower families to succeed. Thank you so much for being part of our community. Keep watching and learning with us. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button.